The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. Wealth Builders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Today's episode is brought to you by Wealth Builders Membership, a proven step-by-step process that helps you achieve financial security within 2 to 3 years. To find out more, head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership. Welcome to this week's episode of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Chris. Good to be with you again.
Yeah, episode 299. We're just one away from that big one.
Well, I wonder what's in store for number 300.
So do I. Let's start thinking about that one, won't we? No, we definitely have a treat in store for the big episode 300. But today we are diving into an important and often overlooked topic, and that's the journey of women in wealth. And we know, Kevin, that the playing field isn't completely level. Women still face some challenges, and gender pay gap, lower pension pots, and less confidence around financial planning. So our guest today is Tracy Hilliard. Tracy's been a great member with us for the last 4 years, I think. And Tracy will be sharing her story. And also we've opened up a wait list for Wealth Builders for Women. So anyone listening today who would like to get their name on that wait list, head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/women and you'll find some more information there.
It's interesting because, I think the macro, everybody knows, who knows me, knows I have an economics background, and the macro big picture numbers in almost every area of wealth building life. Females start behind the curve a little bit. It's not for us to say the approach should be different for men and women, but there are differences, and those differences have got to be acknowledged, both from a macro point of view, what are the numbers, and from a micro point of view, how do you deal with that? I've definitely seen and spoken to some of our female property people who don't feel they're treated with respect often when they're dealing with trades, for example. And I've definitely seen the number of people who take up SSAS is 75% men, 25% women. And the vast majority, you've heard me talk before about the £27 billion worth of pensions floating around in the pension ether. So much of that is assigned to the fact that women often will take career gaps and breaks for whatever reasons, and I know Tracy will touch on that, and they often forget about the pensions that have been left behind, pensions which could form part of their overall future wealth, including being able to access that money in SSAS, for example, but rarely do because they either lose track, lose confidence, life gets in the way, and as a result, all of these circumstances conspire to make it more of a challenging playing field for the female wealth builder. And albeit I think all good principles should be absorbed by males and females equally, I think it's good to hear the passion in Tracy and how she feels about trying to do something about leveling that playing field herself. And she's an enthusiastic and willing sharer within Wealth Builders. And I think we need to acknowledge Helen as well. You want to say something about Helen?
Yeah, well, we've been running a focus group, Women in Wealth, for around about 2 years now. And that's been hosted very, very well by Helen Pollock. So massive thank you to Helen as well for all of her contributions towards this.
Yeah, and she shares the same enthusiasm as Tracy does. So I think it's great to hear that female perspective, recognizing that I've said many times before, and I'll just say it again before we hear from her, that good, solid wealth building principles, are equally applicable to men and women. But I think she's taking this cause to try and really provide a more female-centric way of learning, interacting, executing, building, protecting wealth in a way that is got a female orientation, and notwithstanding the fact women live longer than men, and the vast majority of this great wealth transfer that we hear about from baby boomers to the next will pass into the hands of women who very often didn't have the responsibility or the confidence to be able to make those decisions simply because somebody else took charge. And I think I can understand that from my own perspective of an older husband with a younger wife. I can see I've stepped up to the mark so much more in my family than she has. And she's provided a completely different role, equally valuable for the whole of the family and so super supportive. So quick nod to my wife, Sarah, who rarely gets a mention, if ever, but, couldn't have done what I've done without her complete support from day one. When I got on the journey, she said, well, you better do it now if you're going to do it before we have a family. And now we've got 3 grown-up kids and that's all part of that thing, really. And she took all of her time to look after them. And she's doing the same with our grandkids, So I think there is something that has to be said about a female perspective on how to receive wealth, build wealth, and to feel part of a community where they're heard in the right way they want to be heard.
A good time for us to head on over to our conversation with Tracy Hilliard, a Wealth Builders member who began her journey feeling financially insecure, but within 5 years has achieved financial independence by following the Wealth Builders process. Tracy, welcome to Wealth Talk today. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to today.
It's fantastic to have you with us. And Tracy, you've been a member since 2023 and we've seen your progress and looking forward to hearing about some of those steps that you've taken today. But let me ask you first, Tracy, because we're going to talk today about women in wealth. And can you share why you feel the wealth building journey is often different for women compared to men?
Yeah, Chris, there's a few things that come to mind. I feel it's education. So usually a lack of education, and you can say that's for men and women, but particularly for women, I think confidence is the area that I've certainly identified in myself is a difference. So the lack of confidence that we have in understanding our financial position and also understanding our future. I think there's some societal expectations as well, Chris, that come to mind. So, for instance, previously I've been married. I almost expected my husband to manage the finances. So there's a societal expectation. And I think the final thing I was just going to mention, and I know we'll come on to this a bit later, is some statistics that talk about the variance between what women and men earn, which we've probably heard in the press as well as periods of time when women tend to leave the workforce to manage whether it be kids or other caring responsibilities. And I think the assets that we have, therefore, sometimes are diminished a bit more. So for me, that's the 3 major areas that I would say are differences between men and women.
Yeah, well, let's get into some of those facts because there's some clear evidence out there, isn't there? And I know you've got those numbers. So gender pay gap, that's certainly one place, isn't it, where there's not equality?
Yeah, and look, again, this is not anything's right or wrong. It's just the facts, right? So if we look at it, on average, women tend to be paid about 13% less per hour, as an example. And that also then impacts our pension from the point of view of potentially where women have time off. And I looked at some stats this morning, again, just to remind myself. So generally, on average, men tend to have about £84,000 in pension and women tend to have about 39,000. Again, this is on average. And you can see, again, there's a variance there. So there seems to be a few areas where that discrepancy is quite major in my mind and therefore has implications about how we can manage our assets in the future. And
those figures you mentioned there for pensions, that's at the point of retirement, is it?
Exactly right. So, there's so many and again, this is just some facts. We're seeing these facts. Probably people have read a lot about them, and the implications means that therefore women will ultimately potentially have less when they retire. And as you know, women tend to live longer than men. Statistically, again, they generally live to 83. Men generally live to 79, so 4-year gap. So not only is there less pension in a lot of cases, they also live longer, so they actually need more money. So there's some facts here that start to make me concerned about what we're doing with our wealth from a female perspective.
Do you believe that tradition, that's probably generations preceding us, where the man has always taken the role and perhaps, managed the money of the family and the home, do you still think there's elements of that today?
Yeah, I do think a little bit. I think there is a change. I think the younger generation is seeing a difference where there's a bit more ownership. I'm in my 50s now. I'm seeing some women change in their 50s, in their 40s as well. So there is a change in it, Chris. I don't think necessarily it's probably the same it was probably in the 70s. I remember my mum growing up. I don't think I ever talked to her about finances. I don't know whether you were the same with your mum, but I think I'm a little bit older than you, but, from my perspective, it wasn't something we ever discussed. My mum just worked very hard. In the end, she ended up buying a property. She got divorced and bought a property, but had to lie about how much money she had because otherwise she wouldn't have been entitled to actually even get a mortgage. So there's been quite an evolution, as you would rightly say, but not necessarily to the stage where I think we've got the equality that probably is needed in society yet.
Yeah, and we've been running for quite some time at Wealth Builders a group called that Women in Wealth. And we must give a nod to Helen Pollock, who's been leading that group. And you presented, didn't you, recently? So, it's been really good, hasn't it, to get the input from other female members of the Wealth Builders community. And what are some of the questions and any different challenges that you've heard from that group yourself, Tracy?
Yeah, I think there's, in my mind, the evolution or the requirement for us to grow in confidence. I think, again, I think women are great at supporting each other in the right community. And I think Wealth Builders has that community, if I'm honest with you, about supporting one another in a really great way. So I'm seeing the confidence, the willingness to ask questions too, Chris. I think when women are together, there's something about the freedom. And I think particularly, areas like investing and trading can be quite complex. And I think when you're together as a female, you tend to feel a bit like this is too sophisticated for me to ask a basic question on what is a stock, as an example. So I've generally found that when women get together, they have the freedom to ask maybe the basic questions, if that makes sense, to help them articulate and therefore educate themselves on what they need to do. So the things I've been seeing is growth in confidence and a growth in education through things like the monthly sessions on women that helps that group learn from each other. And the thing I've loved about it so far is the willingness of connection. So if someone's got a problem, there'll be help from someone else. There's a real community spirit that I haven't seen across some other community support groups that I've been in that I think we're really lucky in Wealth Builders.
Absolutely. And we're really delighted, obviously, now that we're, looking to, evolve this into Wealth Builders for Women. And we put a wait list together. So wealthbuilders.co.uk/women. And this is something we're just at early stages with, isn't it, Tracy? We've been talking about this for a while, but I know it's really something that even from day one, you were passionate about sharing knowledge. And now, of course, with the journey you've had, which I'd love to dive into in a moment with you. Just tell us about, why you feel passionate about helping others.
Yep, I feel my journey has been from almost like a child to an adult. I think when I first started out on Wealth Builders, you think you know some things, but actually as you start to unpick it, you realise that you know some things that probably haven't helped you. And I feel my journey is one that anyone can do. So if I can do it, I believe other women can do it. So what I've learned and what I've found is if I can help one female, 2 females, 20 females, and I can help men as well, then what a difference that will make to society. Because what I've found generally in the community is that once you help one, they help someone. And to me, this is a real opportunity for us to create a movement, Chris, that is a supportive movement that does make a difference to women, that women can become financially independent just like I have. If I can do it, they can do it. That's my belief in life. And I really feel this is an opportunity for us to make the biggest difference. In a group of people at the moment that, as we've talked about, financially are probably not in the strongest position compared to men. So that's why I feel really passionate about it. And I think seeing myself go through it, seeing other women go through it, probably even seeing my mum go through it in my past, makes me realise that anyone can do it when they focus on it and they are really accountable for their own journey.
And Kevin and I often say the journey from financial insecurity to independence, normally takes sort of 5 to 7 years. You've done it even quicker than that, Tracy, which is brilliant. And when you first joined Wealth Builders, what was your financial situation like? Can you remember?
It's funny, we were talking about this before, Chris. I think for me, we did the wealth map, which was really powerful because you might have money in certain situations or in a pension or whatever, and I had multiple pensions as well. And I realised when I looked at it that firstly I had in some cases more money, in other cases I had less money. In many cases I felt I didn't have the money. If I stopped working today, I wouldn't be able to, this is back then, I wouldn't be able to afford to look after myself and pay my bills. And it was a really clear awakening about how different I needed to become to change my financial position. So I didn't have the education. And we can come on to this in a bit more detail, but I had a pension. So I knew a bit about pension. I had a final salary scheme with a corporate I used to work with. So I had some money. I don't want to say I had a small ISA at that point in time as well. So I had things, but I didn't know really what to do with it, Chris. And it was almost like I had this bundle of stuff that was sitting there, and I was just staring at it every now and again going, what do I do with this? And almost putting it off because I didn't know or couldn't understand a company that I felt comfortable with, because I think that's also what I've learned, is to find people around me that willing to educate me and that I can trust. And those were the two things that were really important when I found Wealth Builders. And I've found that the overall experience has been amazing for me. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you were doing some education, weren't you, just previous to Wealth Builders? So do you want to tell us about kind of where things started for you?
Yeah, so I did start investing predominantly, not trading, but in stocks and cryptos. So I set up ISAs, so I had a bit of a knowledge around that. I choose individual stocks and I choose individual cryptos. I know there's other ways of investing, but for me, that worked really well. And through that process, I've been able to increase my portfolio and then use that in other financial support situations. And what I mean by that in my SAS. So I've been able to set up a SAS, small self-administrated scheme through my limited company. And what that's allowed me to do is to grow that as well. So I almost view it as I had all these parts, but I didn't really know how to put the jigsaw puzzle together. And I think the pillars that you teach us about and that I've been able to apply have almost allowed me to put those pieces together in a better way. And I've got a far better picture than I ever thought I could have as a result of Wealth Builders and my previous education through investing as well, that led into Wealth Builders in a really great way.
Yeah, you've referred to a couple of things there, which I'll just expand for anyone listening who's a bit confused by the terminology. And sometimes in wealth, there's a few new words to learn. And SAS is a type of pension. You said that what that stands for. It's a unique pension for business owners. And that was a real turning point for you, wasn't it?
And this was just post-COVID. I remember, monthly I was putting an amount of money from my business, my limited company, into my pension because I knew that was the right thing to do, if that makes sense. And I looked at it and I could see that it was going down. So every time I put the monthly amount in, it was decreasing. And then my financial planner at the point in time was talking to me about how he was buying another Tesla. And I thought, he said, yeah, I have 2 Teslas. And I'm like, but my money's going down and you're buying more Teslas. This type of doesn't feel right because you're still taking your monthly cut of my pension. So what Wealth Builders allowed me to do and educated me in an area was how to own my own SAS or set up my own SAS through my limited company, which then meant I took my money out of my pension, moved it across to cryptos and stocks. And that all happened over about a 6-month period. And I started investing in March 2024. And I'd like to share that I'm up over 90% in my stocks and cryptos portfolio. And that would be money I would not have made through the normal pension process. And certainly wasn't because I was losing money, as I said before, rather than making money. So, and that's been me putting more and more money in as the months have gone on, as I've grown in confidence and capability. But to me, 90% over an 18-month period, that's not heard of really, is it?
No, that's fantastic. And one of the early things we do in the process is taking stock and, looking at where's your income coming from. So it's either earned income, time for money, or asset income. And of course, our focus is on creating asset income and recurring income that you can rely on, that you can, spend that money each month. That's what gives you that true financial independence. But did you have earned income? Like when you joined, was it solely reliance on time for money income?
Yeah, it was. Predominantly. I had some investments that I got dividends from, a small amount of that. I had one property. Well, actually, no, I got my property after I joined you guys. So, no, that was the major thing. So I had every quarter I was given an investment because I worked for a corporate and they gave us shares as part of that. So that was my starting point. So it was quite low, Chris, because it was a few stocks, but not many shares overall. That meant that I made enough money to be financially independent. So it took a period of time to look at what I had and say, how can I change this into a way that gives me choices and that this money can come to me in a way that I don't need to work as hard as I have in the past. And that was my real goal, because the thing I found is worked really hard in my career, but it was very reliant upon me going to work, me making things happen rather than, this is what also I like about Wealth Builders is how can I make money while I'm asleep? How can I make money while I'm not having to work? And I think that's the power and the difference too I found about Wealth Builders that I'd like to share with other people as well.
And these are concepts that apply, of course, to men, women, everybody, right? The fundamentals of learning that, you need to build up that asset income. For anyone listening now, particularly women who might not know kind of where to start, just to take a small step in the right direction to build up that confidence, what would be some tips from your side, Tracy?
I think making sure and understanding where your money is. So I had my money across, as you probably can tell by my accent too, I grew up in Australia. So I had a pension in Australia that I didn't know about. And I was like, how do I find this? I had a pension from a previous company that I worked at. So to me, it's almost like taking stock of where you are. And that's where I think for me, the wealth map was quite powerful. And I think anyone can list down just where their assets are, what houses they have, what money they have in the bank. To me, that's a really great place to start because at least you know what you've got. And then you can decide what you're going to do with it. So for me, I would encourage people to do that and to find their pension. So, it's not substantial, but it's a little bit of money. So eventually when I spend more time in Australia, I've got a pension if I want to pull on that. Now, I would not have known about that unless I had have come to Wealth Builders. I think the other things that came to mind that made a really big difference for me at the start too was just even basic things like wills. Chris, I mean, we talk about this a lot. And I've been in situations where my parents have died without wills. I mean, it's those types of things that are worth exploring. And to me, finding a way of educating yourself. I mean, obviously I talk about Wealth Builders, we talk about Wealth Builders, but how can you start educating yourself about what you want to start doing with your wealth or your money, with your assets? Because to me, that's really, really key for us in understanding anything about what we're going to do in the future.
It's often when things are too late that we get that lesson, isn't it? As you mentioned, their parents passing away or loved ones and finding out there wasn't a will and understanding the issues that leaves behind. So yeah, we try to educate in advance of these things, don't we? To make sure that you get these things done. And it gives you massive peace of mind as well.
Yeah, I think it's always awkward, isn't it? If I think about my past situation, things happened that I'm sure my mum wished she had have left money for us and it never happened. And that's life. But you type of thing, I don't want that. I want to be clear on where I want to send my money or what I want to do with my money. Obviously, what people do with that is up to them. But at least there's something written that confirms what I need and what I want for my family. So, yeah, I know it's a small thing, but it's actually a really big thing because also the stress it leaves on other people is always difficult anyway. People miss you. They obviously grieving time and let alone having to work out what to do with wills. At least if that information's there, it's a lot easier.
So that, I guess, is covered in protecting of the wealth in terms of simple steps. And you mentioned ISAs. It's really quite simple to set up an ISA, isn't it? But some people perhaps not aware of the benefits. Do you want to just share a little bit about that, Tracy?
Yeah, no, I think, again, I'd heard of an ISA in the past, but hadn't necessarily focused on it. So as we know, or as hopefully people know, you can put up to £20,000 per annum into your ISA. There's different choices around what you do with your ISAs. Obviously, for me, I do buy and sell stocks through my ISAs. Through my ISA. The benefit of that is any profit you make is tax-free. So, in my case, I've been able to use that £20,000 each year. Even if it's 10,000, even if it's 1,000, whatever money you make on it is actually tax-free. So for me, as much as possible, I try and put my 20,000 if I can a year. And then it's about compounding. It's about getting that money to grow. So any profit I make, I leave there and then I make more and more money. And my goal is to hit a particular figure that gives me, again, choices about what I do with that money. So I have not taken any money out of my ISAs. That I've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. And my goal is to increase that and to continue to actually make money through that and then make a decision about what I do with that money. But I love the fact, Chris, that it's tax-free. I mean, to me, what a great bonus. And while it's here, let's use it is my type of logic. But even if you can put £100 a month or £50 a month, by the time you get to the 12 months, it's still a reasonable amount of money that you can do something with that can make money. And that's the whole benefit in my mind about an ISA. So historically, when I was struggling to put that amount of money in, I just had an automatic withdrawal from my bank account into my ISA on a monthly basis. And I almost didn't know it was going, right? Because it just moved straight across. And it was like, okay, where's that money gone? And even if it's £100, still £12,000, £12 to £1,200 by the time the end of the year's happen, which is great money to then invest. So that's the benefit in my mind of using an ISA and the opportunities around it.
Yeah, and technology has made things so much easier now. Many of us do our banking through our phones and apps, and often you can have roundups which go into investing pots and things like this. So the smallest of steps is just a great place to begin, isn't it? It builds up confidence, it gets used to it, and then you can grow from there. And being surrounded by other people where you can learn, as you say, and you get that, I guess, reassurance that you're on the right track.
For sure. That's made the biggest difference. I think when you're uncertain, just to hear other people's journey. And as I always would say too, it's just, whilst I might be here today talking about my journey, it's just because I've been doing this for a bit longer than other people, right? But people can be at the same place as me in maybe the 3-4 years or maybe 5 years, but it's just time. You need to put time in to make this work, right? And that's the thing I learned over the period of time as well.
So can you share a little bit more about your vision, Tracy, of how would this program differ, do you think, from the existing Wealth Builders Academy?
Yeah, I mean, to me, Wealth Builders have, the pillars and a number of other areas that we've talked about. So for me, the foundation is similar. The only thing I would say is that what I would like to do is build this with women. So it's almost like, what do we need? And for the things that I think about is the type of support networks that we have. How can we create that for women that means women are getting the right support and the connection in the way that makes the biggest difference? The other part around education is sometimes there's unique things that women need more education on, and that might be something in relation to property, it might be in relation to their wills, that might be specific to that female, that particular place. So for me, it's about tailor-making a course that suits where we want to go as a group. And my hope is that as we get this wait list going and we get people coming forward, Chris, that we can start to develop this together and say, look, these are the 3 things that are going to make the biggest difference to us as a community, and that's what we focus on. So for me, this is an evolution of where we could go as a group. And I think the power behind community, which I've seen in Wealth Builders, means that we could create this in a way that meant we had input, we had ownership, and we had clarity as a group of females in a very different way.
Yeah. And the Wealth Builders for Women program is, ready to join as a wait list at the moment. And if this resonates with you, head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/women. Put your name down. There's no commitment. We're simply just gathering, I guess, a list of people that would be interested to find out more about this, Tracy. And if that list grows, then we will work further on this together. And if someone's listening today and anything's holding them back, Tracy, any sort of words of encouragement that perhaps you might have felt 3 or 4 years ago?
I'm one of these people, Chris, who, and Wealth Builders are great like this, but when people sell to me, I tend to go, no, I can do this myself. I'm quite independent. And what I've learned for me, that was the biggest mistake, because I may have got there, but it would have taken me 20 years rather than, my 3 years. So putting your name down on a wait list, it doesn't mean that you have to do anything, but we want to make sure that there is a need for this, that people really do want to make a difference, that they therefore want to grow and they want to learn in the area. So for me, I'm hoping that we'll get the numbers that we've talked about and that we can support women in the right way. And putting your name down, there's not going to be a hard sell in any way. This is just about our first step to see whether there's a desire to make this happen. And I'm really hoping that we'll get the community behind us and the individuals behind us that want to join and be part of this for the future. So please join us. And I look forward to meeting you, working with you, and obviously also with Chris and Kevin in a way that brings this to life.
Absolutely is possible to achieve financial independence within 5 years. Tracy, you are the proof of that. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Thanks
a lot, Chris. Appreciate it. Nice to see you, and thanks again.
Okay. Thanks to Tracy for sharing those insights, and we'll dive into those in a moment. Kevin, before we do that, let's head over to Trustpilot, where we've had a new review this week from Bina, who says, "We are so grateful to Christian, Kevin and the team. We have recently joined Wealth Builders and the experience has been wonderful. We now have clarity and what we need to do, a clear plan. The coaching calls also provide a great framework of keeping on track. Thank you, Wealth Builders team."
Well, good to hear a lot. There were 2 words that I want to pick out of that, if you don't mind, because, I was speaking to Bina and her husband recently. One is clarity. I think the real importance whenever you get confusion, you make poor decisions. You make less effective decisions. So the more you can give clarity, which is what I love to do, we love to do at Wealth Builders, is clarity means you've got a clear vision. And with that clear vision, you can make always one of three decisions, Chris. Do you accept the clarity and go, oh yeah, I've got it, and I'm happy with it? Do you do something yourself, or do you get some help to get it done, to improve and make that vision clearer to where you want to be? And that's great that she's mentioned that, and very specifically. And the second word I'd like to pick up is the word wonderful. A journey full of wonder. Well, we know it's a transformational journey, isn't it? And being her husband at the beginning of that, and we know that life's going to change, just as life changed quite dramatically. Well, it's not always dramatic. I'm going to take that back. I'm going to take back dramatic. It's often that journey of change, like for Tracy, is gradual, isn't it? So the principles of taking small, smart action steps every single month can lead to massive changes, but they don't happen each month. They happen as a result of the compounding effect of that. By the way, one final point before you interrupt me is the same principles that say are equally shareable between men and women are equally shareable wherever you live in the world. As you heard the Antipodean sound of Tracy's voice, those principles work whether you live in Australia, whether you live in the UK, or wherever you live. Some of the applications are different, but the principles are all set.
Well, connection and community are two words that Tracy mentioned, and it just so happens that I connected Bina with Tracy because they both live pretty close, and I thought that would be a good introduction. And Tracy, we've connected with people in the community, and that has certainly helped on her own journey. I must actually also give a shout to Pritesh, who has been his husband, because Pritesh often messages me the day the podcast comes out saying how much he enjoyed it. So I know that he would love to hear his own voice on a shout out.
He loved the shout out. You know how whenever I'm speaking, I normally have my sort of, just as my own unique brand, I have my colored buttons, my contrasting buttons. Don't think I've got them today, but because I'm not on show, but not speaking. But I had a call with Pritesh and Bina, and it was like warm as toast. And he had a scarf around his neck. And I said, what are you doing with a scarf around your neck? He went, it's my unique brand. And that's fine. So he's got a style, he's got a look, and he's got his own focus together with Bina. So I wish them all the best. But good to hear that Tracy is such a sharing person, isn't she? You can tell, so willing to give. And we thought she'd be a great candidate to really shine a light much more on the path building process and the wealth building process for women. And we hope that her message acts as a clarion call for others to join in. She called it a movement, I think. She'd like to create a movement. And I think that's a beautiful word because it implies people rallying behind a call and doing something together to achieve it. And that's why I had to get out of the way and suggest that somebody else and maybe a group of women can get together to help each other. Whether they use our principles or slightly amend them is fine. But it'd be great to hear if people resonate with what Tracy has to say and jump on that wait list. And it's important for us to check that with the wait list first, Chris, isn't it? Because we know wait lists are really important. And what's your take on why we do that?
Well, we've said many times that when you come up with ideas, you might think they're the best idea in the whole world, but you need to validate that. And the best way is to get some feedback from the market and actually make sure there is a market that wants what it is that you think they want. So waitlist is a really good way for people to say, yeah, I'm interested in that. I'd like to find out. I'd like to be part of that. And you don't want to spend hours and hours or loads of money building something only then to release it and find that actually nobody else wants to buy it. So that's, why waitlist is such a good feature.
Yeah, because I have to call it the damp squib effect, don't I? You do something and nobody's interested. That's why we don't like damp squibs. We want to make sure we light the blue touch paper and accelerates. And I'm sure that will be the case. So would be good to invite anybody who either knows someone who you think might want to form part of the movement. If you know anybody who would want to be involved in it. If you're a female yourself and you think, yeah, I'd love to be part of a community of women building wealth, sharing the same language, sharing the same lessons, being vulnerable in the way they want to be, and being helpful in the way they want to be. That would just be great to hear that messages resonating with people. And if you've got Tracy and us, Chris, we're based here in the UK. So if you're in the UK, we'd love to hear from you. But equally, if you want to build your own group, in a country where you are, we'd love to hear from you, because we'd be happy to help you with resources and some ideas and maybe some of the principles we share. But unfortunately, we don't have the energy, let's say, to be leading that in another country, but we're up for it.
Yeah, you can always get in touch with us by sending us an email, hello@wealthbuilders.co.uk. But if you want to be part of that early movement, the Women in Wealth, Wealth Builders for Women, and it is early stages, so there's no commitment here. It's just really putting your name down and saying, hey, just keep me updated about this. And if you'd like to be part of that early beta group, just to provide input and be part of that community, then head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/women. And that's not the only waitlist I just mentioned, Kevin. We talked about a waitlist a few weeks ago, didn't we, with the inheritance tax pension issue that's looming. So another waitlist where we've actually had, hundreds now of names. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not going to go away anytime soon, as we've already seen the government intervene still further. I mean, what have they done? They bashed the farmers, they bashed the business owners, they bashed the property owners, and they're bashing the pension holders, but there's another bash for the property owners coming as well. In theory, anyway, at least we're hearing they want to apply national insurance contributions to rental income. So if they did the VAT on school fees, now potentially national insurance on rental. I mean, look, everywhere you look, you need to be completely financially aware of what's going on with governments. We know governments change, and they'll make changes and they'll threaten changes, but those changes don't come into effect. So we don't know about that, but we know the black hole, which a year ago she said was 20 billion, is now 50 billion black hole. They've got to get the money from somewhere, which means they've got to keep on bashing. And the challenge with all of this for me, Chris, is the short-term thinking. Is a big problem which can't be fixed by thinking about just the length of time of your parliament. You've always got political thinking that's foreshortened by electioneering. There's not really long-term planning and thinking. And some of these things like pensions, they need to be planned for a lifetime. And it wouldn't surprise me if people started opting out pensions, and just saying, sod it, this is just too difficult to maneuver in the landscape where there are landmines dropping everywhere. And after you've crossed the mine or crossed the path, they put them retrospectively, which is the worst of all political engineering, really, to make changes after you've told people you're not going to change, or you've made the changes and then you backfill the changes that make it impossible for people to actually plan at all, because they just don't know which way to turn. And that's going to create a life of uncertainty when the principle of building wealth is to create certainty. So I'm still not going to deviate from those principles of the best way to create certainty is to have multiple streams of recurring income. Yes, there are going to be tax takes on those, but to build them, and if you build it well enough, you should be able to create financial independence, like Tracy, who's going on to bigger and better things, by the way. It's not the end of her journey. We know that because we're in contact with her regularly. I think her next ambition is to move into the commercial property space, making more use of her pensions, and looking forward to meeting her again in person just a couple of weeks away, an event that we're holding for Wealth Builder members and a Wealth Builder partner. So we often do site visits and things where people can get together and see what's going on and the creativity that's going on in the lives of other wealth builders. And we definitely want to encourage creativity. Otherwise, if you shut down creativity and just accept that somebody else's control, you move from financial independence as a plan to financial dependency. So we cannot depend on what governments do for ourselves. We've got to be thinking outside that box. So we will continue to push back on that, and we'll continue to support people who want to bring political clarity in a space right now where there's anything but.
So you're quite right, Kevin. One of anything is risky. Multiple streams of income, absolutely what we teach at Wealth Builders. And I guess a final quote from Tracy, and one that you've shared many times, the original source, certainly somebody else that we both admire. How can I make money when I'm asleep? And that's the essence, isn't it? Because if you don't learn how to make money whilst you're asleep, then you'll be forever working hard, trading time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose you could tweak that and say, life is financial independence about understanding and creating streams of recurring income. And if you don't really do that, you don't follow that, and you don't appreciate that, and you end up really dependent on somebody else, and you become part of somebody else's plan that you're unwittingly a part of, and you can't change it. So I encourage, self-reliance, self-empowerment. Yes, you have to be involved. You can't delegate wealth away. It's not possible, because then you're just hoping for the best, and hope is not a plan. So anyway, enough soapboxes. I seem to be getting on them more and more, Chris. Maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe I should retire on the 300th episode. What do you think?
Careful you don't slip. Okay, so thanks to Tracy for being a wonderful guest today on Wealth Talk. And Kevin, you and I will be back for the big 300. Same time, same place next week.
We will indeed. I'll be there for that one, my friend. Until then, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.